It's a Monday, and that means it's a Matich Monday. Halfway, a little bit more through the college football season, we welcome ESPN college football insider Trevor Matich and a national champion back onto the program. Trevor, very, very interesting, strange game again for BYU. The Cougars at night win again. They're 5-2. What did you make of the overall game as you look at BYU, who is now 5-2 on the season?
What a fantastic win. I mean, the team was opportunistic on all three phases: offense, defense, special teams. They kept fighting. There were all kinds of opportunities for Texas Tech to come back, and BYU wouldn't let them up off the mat, and they got them on the mat because they jumped out to an early lead. BYU's up 14-0 at the end of the first quarter. They're up 24-7 at halftime, and they just kept the pedal to the metal and kept on rolling at full speed. And I thought it was a joy to watch, and it was incredibly entertaining.
Now, there are those who didn't feel like it was a joy to watch the offense, especially in the second half. And the way that BYU is winning is not what people want. But how picky do we want to be in the first year of the Big 12 as BYU is 5-2? Certainly, we're afraid that that's not sustainable. Being +5 obviously is amazing. You're going to win like 99% of those games. So how are you feeling about the way BYU is playing, yet is 5-2?
The way they're playing is the way they have to play. And this is where, do you judge them based on what you wish they were, or do you judge them based on what they're doing with what they have? And what they're doing with what they have right now is being very opportunistic. I mean, you mentioned the +5 in the turnover margin, right? That's not going to be every week for sure. But overall, over the course of the season, BYU is one of the top defenses in the nation in takeaways, and one of the top offenses in the nation at fewest giveaways. And that's kind of weird because BYU is so heavily dependent on the pass. Normally you'd have more turnovers on offense in that kind of a situation, but they're doing a really good job on both sides of the ball at making the turnover battle go in their favor. And I think you can look at 2 of those 5 turnovers in this game. One of them was the fumble that was recovered in the end zone. Okay, so you got freshman quarterback for Texas Tech. They muff the quarterback running back exchange deep in their own territory. Okay, ball's on the ground, running back's right there, quarterback's right there, but guess who else was right there? Max Tooley was right there. He was aggressive. He attacked. So when an opportunity presented itself, he was in position. Now, he didn't recover it, but because he was there, that ball ended up squirting into the end zone, and seemed like half the planet wearing blue was over there trying to recover it for that touchdown. That's because of how aggressive BYU is on defense. We always talk about how more games are lost than they are won. Teams will make a mistake, but for that to work out, you've got to be in position to capitalize on the opponent's mistake. Then you look at the other that I just want to reference right now. It's an interception, and I think it was Eddie Heckard, but what happened was it was a slant coming from the offensive left side. And if that ball had been completed, it would have been a big catch and run because the coverage wasn't that good on that side. But here comes Crew Wakely. He lines up on the offensive right. And when the guy he's covering blocks, he reads the quarterback's eyes and moves over to the left side of the offensive formation and gets into the passing lane. He tipped it in the air, and then it was picked off. That's the kind of thing that is opportunistic, where you're not just sitting around waiting for a turnover to fall into your lap. You're doing things that create turnovers, and you are there when the other side makes a mistake to capitalize on it. So this is, these are things that they're doing. And so when you look at the stats overall, there's a lot of reasons to be unhappy. But when you look at what they've got, when we talk defense now, they're very active. They're very aggressive. And when the opportunity arises, they take advantage of it. They're one of the best in the country at that.
And to your point, Trevor, Tyler Batty lays just an absolute bombardment of a hit to force a fumble on a punt return. BYU jumps on that. That's another turnover. But again, people are focused on the 277 total yards of offense, albeit BYU did have their best rushing output of the season against Texas Tech. So how do you measure what BYU's offense did because the defense was so good and the rushing game took another uptick?
The offense didn't turn it over, did they? And they didn't commit a lot of penalties. That's another big part of it. And the offense is kind of what it is right now. I mean, this is not a great rushing offense. We've discussed that at length. the passing attack has had to make up for that. And fortunately, you've got a quarterback that if there is a Heisman for leadership, then Keaton Slovis would be in New York as a finalist. He has just been stellar as a steadying force and maximizing what is available to accomplish with this offense. And having said that, with the combination quarterback and receivers, but especially receivers and some other things, there's opportunity to get even better in that phase of the game. You mentioned the running attack. Okay, so they're over 150 yards. That's great. If you take away the 55-yard run by L.J. Martin in the first quarter, then I know that counts towards the averages, but the reason it's important to take away a big, long run is because it tells you more about the other bunch of carries that they had. And so, and that's important, because what you don't want is to lose sight of the fact that the running game is supposed to keep you even with the chains. If you take that away, they still ran the ball pretty well. It wasn't incredible, but it was steady. There were too many plays that were 0 to negative yardage, but there were plenty that were 3, 4, 5, 6 yards, right? And so you could see progress in the running attack, and that's good, right? Now they need to keep getting better. They can't abandon the run. They actually handed it off more times than they threw it in this game. And having two big backs instead of one, this is with the return of Aiden Robbins, having two big backs instead of one gives them more options in terms of being able to rotate fresh guys through and just pound, 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 pound. And so we'll see how the running game improves. For now, though, this is still an offense that relies on the passing attack.
Certainly a healthy Aiden Robbins helped. It was pretty predictable when he was in that BYU is going to run. Still scratched out 3.1 yards per carry, which around here is pretty good given how it's gone so far. But BYU has relied on takeaways. There's a certain amount of luck, certain amount of skill associated with that. We could argue all day about that. But how sustainable is that in the last 5 games for BYU to scratch out not just one win to get to a bowl game, but perhaps a couple more?
Well, it's kind of scary, right? Because sometimes when you're so good at getting takeaways, sometimes you'll get none. Sometimes you'll get 5. And so it just depends on the game. A lot of it also has to do with opposing offenses looking at that and saying, look, this is what they're doing to get those takeaways, and we need to make sure we don't put the defense in position to be able to do what they do best. And we need to protect the ball more. And I think this upcoming game against Texas will be very run heavy for the Longhorns, and partly because of that, partly because they'll be starting a freshman quarterback as well. So, is it sustainable? I don't think it's fair to judge the defense on whether or not it's sustainable. I can just say this: they're 4th in the country at number of takeaways so far, and they're 7 games in.
Trevor Matich of ESPN is with us on BYU Sports Nation. Now the Cougars turn their attention to the mighty Texas Longhorns in Austin Saturday afternoon. So much for that limited spotlight. It's national television at 3:30 Eastern, 1:30 Mountain. But Texas is without the services of their very, very talented quarterback, Quinn Ewers. We learned he's going to be out for a few weeks with a shoulder injury. So, Trevor, how do you approach this game? If you're in that BYU locker room and you know you're going against another backup quarterback, this will make 3 weeks in a row. How do you approach this specific scenario?
You have to attack. You have to attack, because you can't just sit back and hope that they make the mistakes to give you the game. They're not going to do that. But if you attack, you can force mistakes, which is what happened against Texas Tech. Now, Malik Murphy is the freshman quarterback that'll probably be starting in this game. He's physically a lot like Arkansas's KJ Jefferson. He's 6'5", about 240 pounds, really strong runner, very inexperienced as a passer. And BYU can show him a lot of looks and hopefully give him opportunities to get confused. We'll see how that works out. From a standpoint of the BYU defense, the pass catchers for Texas are among the best in the country as a group. They've got a great group of wide receivers. Their tight end Sanders is one of the best deep threats as a tight end receiver in the country. There's going to be a lot of opportunity for Texas to be able to get some big plays if the young quarterback is able to pull things together from the passing attack. So if I'm BYU's defense, I'm assuming that they're just going to hand off. because they're great at running back. I mean, they're great. Jonathan Brooks is one of the best running backs in the Big 12. C.J. Baxter is a former 5-star recruit. He's a freshman. But you rotate those guys through, and that's a 1-2 punch behind one of the best offensive lines, really one of the better offensive lines in the country. The first priority for BYU's defense is going to be get up there and limit the run so that the young quarterback has to start throwing the ball. That's important. But remember also how BYU is winning. They're winning by playing more cleanly than the opponent. This is a feature of their wins. And one of those aspects is when they get into scoring position, they score. They're one of the best in the country offensively at getting points in the red zone. And the other thing is, we talk about losing games. BYU has been very good at limiting penalties. Against Texas Tech, they had half the penalties. It was 9 for the Red Raiders. It was 4 for the Cougars, and about 1/3 the penalty yards, less than 1/3 that the opponent had. That's another thing they'll need to do. BYU needs to simultaneously attack and then play more cleanly than Texas does from a standpoint of mistakes. That will put them in a position to have a chance to win. Now, I still think they'll need some help from Texas. But at the same time, BYU's formula for winning puts them in position to be able to be in the game and have a chance.
They keep it clean, 14th in the country in fewest penalty yards per game. 5 games left. Certainly Iowa State at home looks like the most winnable game for BYU, with at Texas, at West Virginia, Iowa State, Oklahoma, at Oklahoma State. What's the second most winnable game, in your opinion, if it's not Iowa State being first?
You know, it's at Oklahoma State is an interesting one because Oklahoma State early in the season was a hot mess. I mean, they just were a mess. You never knew what was going to happen. They were rotating 3 different quarterbacks. They weren't consistent at all. They lost some games they should never have lost in ways that they should never have lost them. Then they settled in the last few weeks on one quarterback, and they've been a completely different team. So, which Oklahoma State is it going to be? And how strong is that Cowboys team going to be, and how focused on BYU are they going to be? So that may be the second best likelihood, but you never know. BYU has beaten Texas. BYU has beaten Oklahoma with a Heisman candidate and with a strong team, nationally ranked, highly ranked team in the past. BYU has risen up and beaten teams they're not supposed to beat. And so their mindset is we're going to win every single one of these games. But from a standpoint of the fans on the outside in, I think that's where you would probably pencil it in. But you never know. This is a team that could rise up and surprise you.
Hey, give me all of the rest of the games at night. Hey, just give me the night games, Trevor.
Right.
It's a different deal, man.
Or at least at night, and make sure to put bacon on the cougar tails, because there seems to be some sort of magic when those two things come together.
We have one of those with your name on it as soon as you get back to Provo. Mark my word.
I will be there.
Great to talk to you, Trevor. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Trev.
Thanks, guys.